Welcome to the WeShape podcast. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
We have an in-person guest today, my favorite.
I know, I love it when you get to see somebody's eyes and they're next to you and you can talk to them.
I'm just going to welcome Marilyn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It feels good to be back.
Yeah, Marilyn's been here before. Marilyn is one of our WeShape coaches. We are in the process of adding her into our WeShape product as one of the coaches. So
The long, painstaking process.
It's a huge project to add in a coach.
It's going to be so worth it, though.
It's 9,000 video files that they have to create and set up and code. And exactly.
One day it's going to happen. It's in the queue. It's there. So in the future, if you're here in the WeShape product, you will sign in and you will have the option to choose working out with Coach Tyler or Coach Marilyn. But
if you're sick of working out with Coach Tyler, you can come.
Can I share?
Suddenly there's just a mass migration.
I'm just going to share.
You should do it. Share.
Yeah. One of the people who sits on our board is a woman who's a dear friend of mine. And she and I were doing the workout to go through like a product review. And I was like, we got to get Marilyn in here. Like, I love you so much, but I can't live with you and work out with you and work with you. And I just got to have a little tiny gap. So I'm probably the most excited for Marilyn to be in the product.
I can use the product and not look like a total narcissist. Right?
It is very bizarre.
Work out to yourself.
I've seen him do it. What a weird model for our children to walk in and watch their dad working out to himself. Like, that's just bizarre. Anyway, it's okay. We have so many reasons.
To unpack here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say I'll probably work out to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, girl.
For some reason, I'm really here for that.
Yeah.
I'm less here for Tyler doing it, but I'm good, girl. I'm really here for you doing it.
I like it.
But I really wanted to have Marilyn come back because when she was here last, she really shared her journey and some really scary things that happened to her with her health. And a lot of people commented on our social media around like, I've been experiencing the same thing, so I want to revisit her story a little bit because you almost lost your life. And it was really significant. And it really plays into this theme that we talk a lot about at WeShape, which is one of our goals here is not to have people do a fad workout or a fad diet or a fad anything. It's to learn how to connect with themselves on a deeper level and have a deeper connection with their body. And through that process, people learn how to better advocate for themselves, how to show up for themselves, to take care of themselves in a different way.
Trust themselves.
To make themselves a priority. And I think especially for people who identify as female, there is just this cultural, subconscious even expectation that we just show up for everybody else. And today is actually, it's really ironic that we're doing this podcast today. So I mentioned when you shared your story last time that my cousin passed away when she was 38 years old and had 4 children. And today was the day of her passing, actually. Wow. And I woke up this morning and saw that on my calendar and was like, wow, this is not a freaking coincidence. This is not a coincidence because she was the biggest advocate I ever knew for her children, but self-advocacy was something she deeply struggled with. And ultimately, it did cost her life. And so...
and it was such a similar story, too.
It was a very similar story.
She had these symptoms. She was experiencing these symptoms, and she went to the doctor, and they're like, here, take these drugs, and like, it's not a big deal. And then just one day, out of nowhere, her heart stops, and they could have caught it years ago. And
it was a really harsh reality to experience such a sudden death for such a young woman who had very young children. And then hearing your story and sort of the, oh my gosh, like that could have been you, and like that could be so many other people. Like it reminded me after that experience, like, wow, like this is part of my job here at WeShape is to help people, especially people who identify as female, to really learn what self-advocacy means. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that we're recording this on the anniversary of her passing. And I just want to continue to deliver that message. It's been such an important reminder for me. And before we share your story, I even had this thought around, when my older daughter was 5, she had a weird infection that we didn't know what it was. And we took her to the emergency room, and her oxygen was very low, and they rushed her back, and they assured us she would only have to stay in the hospital for a day. And one day turned into 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. Oh. And I remember the level of advocacy I had for her, like when they weren't able to give us any answers. I was already on the phone with Stanford. I was calling other doctors. I was like, I'm the doctor now. Like, we will figure this shit out. Yeah, no, like for real.
Yeah.
The level of advocacy I had around, like, we will figure out what's happening was so high. And I just had this thought this morning, like, what if every woman offered themselves that? Like, what a different, I mean, if we advocated for ourselves the way we do for our children.
So true. Because we all do it for our kids.
We all do it.
But we don't do it for ourselves.
This is a big deal. I was on one of our challenge coaching calls last week, and we kind of opened the floor for people to share their experiences about resetting a more meaningful intention.
Yes.
So instead of showing up for your workout because you want to lose some belly fat or whatever, it's like, why are you really here? And as people started sharing, that theme just emerged. It was just, I'm 60 years old. I am like realizing I need to show up for myself, and I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't even know how to do that. Or like when I try to do that, I have to like justify it.
Yeah.
I have to say, well, after I did this and this and this for everybody else, and now I can like go do this one thing for me. And it's heartbreaking to see people unable to show up for and advocate for their own needs because they feel like the most important thing to do is take care of everyone else,
Yes.
And it's just sad.
So yeah, Marilyn, I know we've shared the story before, but I think it's important to share it again. So maybe you can give us just, a little bit more of your story. Like, tell us, for those who haven't heard, like, tell us what happened to you and kind of a little bit of your journey.
Okay. So I'm glad to be back. In 2015, I started coughing, and I coughed for like 8 months. And I kept going to urgent cares. I didn't have a normal doctor at the time. And they would tell me that it was the new climate. I had a cold. It was desert fever or something. And so I got cough medicine over and over, but the cough wouldn't go away. Well, during this time, I was also gaining weight, a lot of weight, 80 pounds in a year. I finally got established with the Veterans Hospital. And I went in for some allergy shots, and the cough was there, present. And the allergist said, well, how long have you been coughing? And I said, like 8 months. And she's like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't normal. But again, I was working, I had kids. I just didn't think to press it more. So she sent me for a chest x-ray thinking it was pneumonia. And before I even got halfway down the freeway, they called me back and said, you need to come back in. And it was my heart. So they put me into a room, did an echocardiogram, and my heart was operating at 15%.
That's so scary.
And so
How did you feel in that moment?
very scared.
Yeah.
I was very, very,
I mean, you had 2 children at home.
I had 2 children.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was pneumonia. And I just thought that the urgent cares weren't catching it. So when this doctor said it's probably pneumonia, I thought that's what it is. And so when they put me in this room and did this echocardiogram, they told me I wouldn't know the results for a little while. But as I was getting ready to leave, the radiologist said, don't get dressed. And so that, when a doctor's come in right away, a specialist, there's something wrong. And I remember tearing up, being extremely scared, thinking my kids are at home by themselves right now. They were teenagers, but they're home by themselves, and I have a doctor coming in about my heart. And at that point, they told me that it wasn't, operating right. And they started talking transplant right away. And I knew that was weird, too. Like, who goes straight to talking transplant
Yeah.
on your first visit?
Wow.
So I knew it was really serious. They they drained off fluid, kept me in the hospital until I was able to get some of that. There was a lot of fluid, like 30 pounds around my heart.
Oh my gosh.
They got the fluid off my heart, and they sent me home on medicine. And it just was a whole different world for me from that point on. I had been working, and I still was working. I was an air traffic controller. So a very stressful job.
Say low stress, slow pace.
A very
Work from home if you need to.
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. A very stressful job. And I was commuting 2 hours each way. And
4 hours a day?
4 hours a day,
Oh
10-hour shifts, with a heart that was operating at 15%, coming home, taking care of my children, and repeating it 4 days a week. Yeah. And I didn't know. I mean, I did it because I worked. And so pretty soon after that, I was medically retired because you have to pass a flight physical. And that wasn't going to happen anymore. But I worked for the government, and they actually let me work from home as an air traffic controller. I just did paperwork.
On Zoom?
Yeah. I did paperwork just so that they could keep me employed until my retirement went through. So they really took care of me.
That's great to hear.
They took care of me, and that allowed me to take care of myself because I was at home. And so my journey to get better, I didn't want a heart transplant. But I also couldn't do much of anything. And so like I've shared before, my journey started walking to the mailbox, which is less than a block. I would walk to the mailbox every day and walk back, be winded and in the bed afterwards. But I was like, I got to build my heart muscle because I was an athlete growing up, and I knew that, you train your muscles.
Yeah.
The heart's a muscle.
You know how few people think like that when it comes to the heart, right?
Yeah.
They just don't think of it as something that you want to build a lot of strength and power.
You got to train it.
You got to train it, yeah.
And that's what I did for the next 5 years. I've been training, well, it's been 6 now. I've been training my heart, and it's much better. I'm at about 55% operational, which is almost normal. 60 is normal. And I train it. I do cardio, I lift, I do functional fitness, I play football, I hike, I swim, I do everything. And my heart is very, very strong.
That's so good to hear that you're finding that. But I just, I know that during that time you were probably really processing a lot of just like, I have to be in this moment. But have you had any point since then where you feel like you've reflected on like, wow, like maybe something was calling me inside that something wasn't right? Or like, can you look back and see where you were dismissed?
Yes.
And like to maybe share a little bit about that.
Well, I think they said that the heart problems probably went back to when my children were very young.
Oh, wow.
And I would go to the doctor for different things. Some of it was sleep issues. Some was they would tell me I had asthma 1 week, and then I didn't have asthma. A lot of doctors were guessing what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
When I finally found the cardiologist, who I love, she went through my medical records for like 20 years. And she showed me back when I was 19. She's like, you were already having heart issues.
Wow.
But nobody was telling you. Like, they weren't putting everything together.
Like, the dots.
But she's like, looking at everything you were complaining about, your heart was already giving you trouble. And so it probably came from after I had my first daughter.
Okay.
There's a thing called I'm not sure. But it's after you have a baby, it's cardiomyopathy.
I see.
I have cardiomyopathy, dilated. But a lot of women get it right after having babies. But I was never treated for it, so it probably just got worse over time. But even though I felt like, looking back, like I thought when I got to California, I felt terrible. But after I finally stopped working and I got home and I was taking care of myself and I looked back, I had been feeling terrible for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And kind of like you said with your cousin, you're taking care of your kids, you're taking care of your husbands, you're taking care of the people you work with, and you just learn to deal with it. You push through everything. And everyone say, oh, you're Superwoman.
And they reward you for it, right?
They reward you for it.
Oh, my God.
I think one of the hardest things to break free from is a narrative that you will participate in that you receive external validation from.
Yeah.
That is
achievement, fame, success.
And I can't help but think of, I've talked about this woman on the podcast before, but I always want to give her a shout out because she just came out with a cool deck that Nina actually got me for my birthday, and she has a really cool book. Her name is Teresa Hershey, and she has her Instagram social is the Nap Ministry. And she has a book called Rest is Resistance. And it talks about a lot of things around sexism and racism and different ways that our culture breeds sort of this grind mentality and how it like really is not healthy for us as a culture. And I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she has the best content. And I have her little cards and I put them all around the office. It's like, like I don't even.
There's one behind you.
Oh, what does it say? I will imagine what my body needs. I will daydream for freedom. So she just has like different perspectives that allow us to say like, she gives people permission to rest and to do it as a form of resistance for this grind culture that keeps people small and that keeps like sort of like capitalism, racism, sexism going. Like, she's like, this is what contributes to it. And you're praised and validated for it, but it's actually not helping anybody. So it's kind of like, again, it's understanding that we're getting validation for giving, and we're actually harming ourselves. And so to just step outside of that validation and be able to recognize that's actually not healthy, and to be able to come back to yourself. Like, I just love to promote anyone who's producing content like that, because it just is such an opportunity to open your mind to a new perspective. And so do you feel like you have such a different place in terms of what self-advocacy means for you now?
Absolutely.
Like, what does that look like now?
I'm number one.
Yes.
I'm number one. I love it.
I love it.
I love my children. I love them. But I'm number one. And there's nobody else in this world that will ever come before me ever again. And it took me almost dying. And I tell people, like, because I live my life very open now. I do what I want to do. When I want to do, I stay in the bed. I rest. When I'm tired, I rest. And I don't care if that means I stay in my pajamas all day long and binge watch TV or read or whatever. I'm going to do it because it's for me. And I've actually had people complain, like, that's all you did all day? Yeah, it is. And I loved it.
Yeah.
And I feel really good about it. So, yeah.
How did you make the shift, right? Because I noticed that a lot of people have that internal voice that says rest more or take more time away. And then the judgment kicks in. Oh, but you can't because of this and you can't because of that. And you got to take care of this. You got to take care of that. How did you make that shift?
I think it just clicked when I looked back and I was hearing I was going to have a heart transplant. And I wasn't sure I would make it through the transplant because I felt like I had cheated death for this long, that I wasn't going under the knife for that. And I said, if you keep me here, I'm going to live life unapologetically. I'm going to take care of me, and I'm going to treat myself as this is my second chance. And so believing that it's my second chance, I don't put up with anything. I just, I made myself the priority. And I've lost people in my life for that reason. And I've gained some really good people for that reason.
We always talk about the people we lose, but we don't talk about the people that we gain.
Because the people that you lost, I mean, they might have served a great role in your life at one point, but maybe they weren't the person that needed to be there.
Exactly. I feel that everybody has a season in your life. And so I have no issues with anybody. They served a purpose, and I hopefully served a purpose to them. But it just, our season was over. So.
See you later, pal. I at the end of last year, I went with a friend for 4 or 5 days away, and we set really strong intentions to rest and to not fill the schedule with anything. And we you could tell that we felt a little bit like, oh no, this is like really like too much.
Like you're gonna get in trouble.
Like, a little bit. And we would stay in bed for like 14 hours a day, and we would like order food in, and like we watched a whole series, and we did so much reading, and we just hadn't. And I remember coming back from that trip going like,
feeling revived?
I'm a new person.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I forget, like I really felt like a new person. And I forget, and I keep telling her, okay, so this next coming year, do we get that week? And I'm like, we actually can give ourselves permission to do some of that every day. Yeah. And I think that we just don't have. I think we have a couple ways that we can do this. We can go down a path, unfortunately, like yours, that kind of jolts you into like you're making an overnight change, or we can acknowledge that path is possible if we don't take small actions towards practicing that now. I think if people aren't faced with a huge health scare like that. And they're not faced with a life or death situation, I can't do that overnight. Don't do that overnight. That's fine. But recognize that this is an option and start taking care of yourself in a new way, which slowly over time will develop. And like even Tyler and I have been doing things like we've tried to do this. We might not have been good, but like just talking about it is like, okay, there has to be one day a month on the weekend where we tell the children you're not going anywhere, no one's coming over, we're just going to stay home. And like I printed out things that they could do, so when they say they're bored, I'm like, go look at the list and you can pick something from the list. But there's just no pressure to be anywhere, no pressure to do anything. We're just going to be. And I think we don't live in a culture that really especially now with technology that really allows that opportunity to just be, not be somewhere, not have someone come over to your house, just to allow yourself to like legitimately rest.
Yes.
And so I want to encourage people that, you know, you don't have to face what you face. You can take small, this is like beyond making sure you check in with the doctor, although this is just, let's just pause and say, reminder, if you haven't seen a doctor in the last year, it's time for a physical.
So if there's a voice in the back of your head saying
and
something.
if you see that doctor and you don't feel like they hear you all the way, like you're like, oh, I'm saying something, but I don't really feel like they're seeing me, it's okay to find a new doctor. Doctors are practicing medicine. They do amazing work, but they're practicing. And so I think it's important to find a doctor that you feel really advocates for and you feel seen and heard.
Yes.
But in addition to that, taking these small steps in our day-to-day lives allow us that space to listen to our body, allow us that practice of self-advocacy, allow us to not let other people's opinions and beliefs override our own internal wisdom and knowing.
Yeah,
you said something earlier that I thought was pretty powerful, which was, I thought I felt bad when I got to California, but when I reflect on it, I felt bad a lot earlier than that. And it kind of goes into what you're saying is, you know, the way out from not caring for yourself is to take some action, even if it's just tiny, and start building that momentum. But we don't realize that we got to this position by slowly sacrificing little pieces of ourselves. Yeah. You know, it starts when we're a kid and they say, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do this, or you're selfish or whatever. Yeah. And we start to lose our ability to advocate for self. And then it just slowly but surely, they're just taking us away from ourselves. And so it's like, how do we start building back towards that, right? Hey there, if you're enjoying the WeShape podcast and you've heard us talk about WeShape before, then you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, what is WeShape? Well, at WeShape, we create personalized at-home workouts for every single one of our members. These are workouts where every single movement is customized to you to help you connect with your body and care for your body in a much more meaningful way. We also have a community of people there to support you, to help uplift you as you examine your beliefs, set new intentions, and again, start showing up for yourself as an act of self-care rather than trying to do your workouts as an act of self-judgment. And hey, if you're a fan of the podcast, we also do a live podcast discussion group on Zoom, as well as other Q&As, as well as free challenges for all of our members to help you get motivated to actually start taking action to caring for yourself so you can feel better in your body and about your body. So if you want to try WeShape for free for 2 full weeks, go to WeShape.com/podcast and you can get started today.
I can think back to when I was a teenager and even in college. I would like every time a final exam was done, I would be sick for like 2 weeks. And it was like I was just holding on just to get it all done. And even as in high school, my friends were like out having fun. I think I worked like almost every day. And then I was like doing, and then I swear every semester at the end of the semester, I would get sick and get like bronchitis for 2 weeks. And it was like, that's an unhealthy pattern. Like just to look back. I think that's a good point to reflect and look back and say like, when did I feel great in my life? When did I feel rested? When did I feel full of energy? When did I have mental clarity? And what was I doing in my life at that time to provide that? And if you've never felt that, that's a huge red flag.
That's what I was going to say. I can't think to maybe when I was a child.
Yeah.
But from the time I became an adult and I started working and I had kids, I can't think to when I felt at peace and I was clear and my mental state was perfect. And physically I was working out. But even then, like I would work out and I'd wear a heart monitor and my heart rate would be like 190. And in like Orange Theory Fitness, they'd be like, oh my God, your heart rate. I'm like, oh, it's just normal. That's how it is. But looking back, that wasn't normal.
I think there's something that needs to be said here too, which is, I'm obviously on a motherhood journey. You guys can't see, but I'm very round right now, baby on the way. But, I came across, and it's so funny to say it was like a meme, but it was like a piece of information on my Instagram that I scrolled past, and it said like this woman had gone to the doctor repeatedly right after having a baby. I don't feel quite right. Something's kind of wrong. And they were like, welcome to motherhood. Yeah. You're supposed to kind of feel like shit.
You hear that all the time.
And I'm like, oh my God. And it turned out she had a really significant problem with her health. I don't remember exactly what, but maybe if that had happened differently and they hadn't been like, you're supposed to be tired, you're supposed to feel depleted, you're supposed to feel like crap, like maybe we would have a little bit more awareness around like, oh wow, I actually am allowed to try to feel good again, even though this is also really hard. And
I mean, you and I have been talking, like, especially more recently as you were getting more and more uncomfortable when you texted me the other day, and I was like, are you doing okay? And you're like, well, I had this thing going on with my pelvis, and it just feels like it's cracking and breaking when I walk. And I went,
but I'm great.
And I replied back to her, I said, did you text your midwife? And she's like, well, I'll see her in a couple weeks. And I was like,
No.
girl.
I'm seeing a chiropractor in case anyone is upset about that.
I walked into Nina's house the other day, and she looks at me and she says, hey, how's it going? I was like, oh, it's going all right. How about you? She's like, it's going great. And I kind of like was like, oh, it's not going great. And my face changed, and she said, oh, what's wrong? And I was like, no, this is what's wrong with you. I know I can tell.
I thought you were sad.
I thought I was sad. I was like, I'm feeling sad for
okay?
you. Oh my gosh.
And I just keep sharing, like, one of the hardest, I think I was one of the first people in my friends group to have kids. And I think that one of the hardest things that I have gone through as a friend is watching some of my friends have kids, because I know what's about to come. Where I'm just like, oh no, how do I like let you stay in your own lane while I'm in my own lane, but like also like share, like, how do we get you some self-advocacy? Because you really do feel like it's your responsibility to not have self-advocacy, and then you're so sleep deprived in your body, and we normalize it through the culture, and then we just don't even know what we need. And that is what baffles me, is like, Tyler will tell me all the time, well, what do you need? And I freeze and I go, I don't know. And you almost can't comprehend that. And you're like, well, I can't help you unless you and I'm like, but I don't know. And so I feel like
answer, I just got to say this out loud. When the answer is I don't know, the answer is I need space, I need quiet, I need time to connect with me.
Yes.
Right? The only time we understand what we need, what we want, who we want to be, who our true selves are, is by just spending time being.
Yes.
Right? And the more time we get there, the more we give ourselves the freedom to think what we want to think and do what we want to do. And as we do that, we go, I like this, I don't like that, I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that. And then we can start to show up and say, here are the things that I need to feel like myself.
Yes.
Right? But I think, this kind of bears in mind what you were saying earlier is, you had this shocking situation happen. And it's like, you got to change, right? And before that, sacrificing little pieces of yourself along the way. And as you reflect back on that, like what keeps people stuck in not looking at themselves and saying, I need to advocate for me. I need to take a baby step. I need to take some time, some space. What keeps people stuck in that?
I can't speak for everyone else, but I know for myself, it was the pressure of everybody who knew me saying, you're a super mom. You do it all.
That was your identity.
That was my identity.
Yeah.
That's who I thought I was supposed to be. And so, but I realized you can be a super mom and still take care of yourself. But at that time, I didn't understand that. I was a single mom. I was a working mom. My kids were doing great, and I was very proud. And so admitting that I had my own, to me, felt like I would be letting other people down. And that's what really stuck with me.
Every ounce of your energy had to be dedicated towards helping someone else.
Well, it was like synonymous with self-sacrifice, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was, and then I saw my mom and my grandmother. They were also, to me, superwomen. And so I felt like, I can't let them down. They're my examples. I got to be just like they were, And so it was that I didn't want to let people down. But now it's ironic because I am not, I still feel I'm super.
Well, you are. Yeah.
But I take care of myself and I'm more about myself. But I'm very vocal and transparent with my journey, with how I got to here, where I'm at now, what I will and will not allow from people. And I share it on social media. When you talk to me, you hear it. And it is amazing how many people are inspired by that.
What an incredible example for your daughters,
it is still a superpower because people are like, wow, people I don't know will message me and be like, what you said inspired me. And you don't know me, but I've gone through this and I never thought of it like that. And so in a different way, I'm still inspiring people, but that's because I'm taking care of me. And people need to see people who take care of themselves.
To have permission.
This is it.
You
nailed it. I mean, like the problem is a bunch of people are parading around saying, this is what you should aspire towards. You should be a superwoman. You should be a superman. You've got to make money. You've got to have abs. You got to do this. You got to do that. And everybody goes, yes, that's what I got to do. Right? And they don't realize that almost everybody who is posting that content is miserable on the inside.
Exactly.
They're empty on the inside, and they're seeking all of those things to make themselves feel whole.
They don't always realize
and you don't know it. I have spent so much time on this path thinking that I was achieving, thinking that I was on the right path, and then until you just be for a moment.
Yes.
And you go, wait a second. I am going way down the wrong path. Yeah. Clearly it drives me insane.
Me too. And one of the things, like, I mean, I love social media because there's so much good that comes out of it. I mean, there's a lot of bad too, but you get inspired by people for different reasons.
Yeah.
And it's not, like you said, it's not these influencers that, and not that they're all bad, but that put on this big show. It's the people that are genuine and that are transparent, and they show their ups and their downs. One of the things that really hits close to my heart is I enjoy celebrating. So, and more so after my heart scare. Ever since then,
you can live more, huh?
Yes. And so for my birthdays, it's huge. Every year I do a huge, huge thing. No matter what the age is, I'm going to celebrate. It's a new life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people always show up. And when everybody gives their speeches, they all say, "You are so genuine." And I don't try fake genuine. And I feel like people know that. And so when people tell me, I feel like I can talk to you about anything, I can listen to you, and you look around the room and there's people of all walks of life, and that's what I feel is a superpower. When you can bring people together, when you can be your true self, when you don't have to put on a front for people. But it took. I'm being honest. I wasn't always like that. People thought I was so positive and happy, and like I was miserable. Physically and mentally, I was miserable. But now I'm at that place where I'm not. So.
And I think you're bringing like a really valuable point. And what I think some of the things that maybe people can take away from your story is it sounds like, if I had to guess, it sounds like you probably do less than you did before. And it sounds like you probably say no more.
Yes, I do say no more.
And it sounds like you're okay with not living up to other people's expectations.
Absolutely. I don't know that I do less. I do less of things I don't want to do.
Super important distinction.
Oh my God. You know what I love about that distinction?
That is a really important distinction.
Yes.
This is an important distinction because I have this belief that when people say like, oh, you know, you have a lot of energy or I don't have a lot of energy, a lot of that is just wrapped up in either thinking everything through so much all the time, and it's just like every task takes so much energy because there's all this behind the scenes happening, or we're doing things that take energy away from us. And the truth is, when we do things that we enjoy, it gives us energy.
It gives us energy.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it makes a huge difference on your ability to like show up and have your life and do the things that you want, right?
And you have more time. You're happier doing it. People see that you're happy. And yes, saying no. I do say no. So I always was raised to be nice. Always be nice to people. Always be nice. And in my head, being nice was saying yes, bending over backwards. Even if I couldn't do it, find a way to make it happen or find somebody else to do it. I've changed that mindset to always be kind.
So you can say no and be kind. Yeah.
Exactly.
Big difference.
And that's like my Instagram. I made it that for a reason. Because I can say no. I can do it kindly. But I can be kind.
Yes.
And it doesn't put the pressure on me like, oh, you have to be nice. I have to, because nice to me means like I have to do it.
Right.
But I can kindly say no.
And people who know you and genuinely know your heart are going to be so respectful of that no.
Absolutely.
And it's reminding me, I did hear something last week where someone said no is a complete sentence. And I went, oh, my no's are usually filled with 3 paragraphs.
Nope.
Excuses and reasons.
Yeah, like, oh, they'll still think I'm a good person, right, even though I'm saying no.
I heard someone say that over-explanation was actually a trauma response.
Oh. Yeah.
So sorry for that, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, you're allowed to say, that doesn't work for me.
And one of the things, you kind of mentioned it earlier about the day of rest. And I don't like to preach to others because, again, like you, I had my kids earlier than everybody else. So most of my friends have younger children. And I see anxiety in a lot of them. And I see stress. And I see them trying to do everything with their kids every day, every activity, and if they're not doing something, they feel like their kids are being let down. And I try to stress, it's okay to have a day of no. It's okay to have a day of just staying at home. Even if you turn the TV on, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, you guys can chill out. But I see so many of my friends trying to have every minute of their life filled out. And it causes more anxiety. And the kids feel it. They feel it. I see it. And so I really try to, without preaching to people, just post when I'm resting and how good it makes me feel. Like, because maybe over time people will start to catch on.
Yeah.
I wish I would have as a parent.
Yeah.
I wish I would have learned to Your kids don't always have to be occupied.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sanity for everybody in your house to take a break.
Well, it was funny because we had been doing a lot of projects here at WeShape, and Tyler came to me and was like, what can we do for our team? Like, things have just been, I want to just say thank you. And I was like, well, let's pause and see, like, what's our intention? Like, we don't really want to overwork people, and we want to create some balance. And so we decided to have a company rest day. And so everyone was like, oh, what? And I was like, let's all, and then I was like, I had to take the day too, because I was like, you got to lead, right? Yeah. And so, but like this idea that like, you know, I really wanted to be mindful that we weren't rewarding grind culture, that we were like, ooh, those projects were really heavy projects. We're going to put everything down. And the only requirement is that you're going to take a rest day and that you're going to do something that feels restful.
Yes.
And so, because I do think we can get trapped in that, like, again, I think the hardest thing is breaking a cycle or a belief that you get validation from. Yeah. Like, and so to me, it's like, I'm like, how do we mindfully just like pay attention to these things that are placed upon us as expectations? Like, I sometimes just get so frustrated at myself that I don't even realize. Like, for instance, Tyler and I have given each other this opportunity to take one day a week a piece. When it's Tyler's day, he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't come home till the next day at 5, and he says goodbye, and the children say goodbye. On my days, I always come home at 4. I make sure I spend an hour or two with the kids before, because I'm like, oh, and then sometimes I even show up the next morning at like 7 in the morning, and I'm like, why am I doing that?
Stop.
I know. But do you see what I mean? Like,
yes,
I find myself,
I
find myself it is guilt.
It is guilt.
I'm like, but I never question when you do it. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's taking his day. And I'm like, but they're not going to see me for 30 hours and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I have all these reasons in my mind why that's going to harm them.
I'll contest that I never question when you do it. But I think that you should definitely take your time away.
Well, but it's just a condition.
You should set a timer for yourself.
It's just a condition.
Come back until
this
time.
I will tell you, that was me as a mom. My children are adults now, and they still want to be with me like this.
Okay.
You need to separate some.
Yeah, well, my younger one is very attached to me.
Yeah. And she will stay attached to you. And attachment's good, but you don't want a 24-year-old who's always like, I'm like, go do something. But I raised them that way, that they were I always put them first. Yeah. And I always kept them on my hip. Yeah. And looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have gave them a little, and I was a little better with my second daughter, and she's more independent.
It's like, don't teach them don't teach them that you're going to advocate for them. Teach them to advocate for themselves.
Or show them
how to advocate. Yes, but I did everything for them as far as advocating. That they still expect me to be that advocator for them, and so now I'm like, at their adult age, no, this is how you do it. I'll help you, but this is how you need to advocate. Because I didn't advocate for myself, but I need them to advocate for themselves.
And like, we talk about this all the time, sort of this like idea behind the feminist movement of like women have a place in the workspace and can gain more financial independence and freedom. And we've come a long way since women were allowed to get their own checking accounts, which I think was only in...
I think it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
Woo! But the problem with that, we talk about this, Nina and I talk about this sometimes, is now it feels like women are expected to have financial independence, huge strides in their career, and still show up for their kids. And so they've done the math on this. We understand that being a mother is 2 full-time jobs, and then to have a career is another. It's like, okay, but that's not mathing. And so I think part of the reason I get inside my head and get the guilt is because I'm also choosing to have a career. And so I'm like, I feel like I can't win. It's like if I'm at home, then there's a part of me that feels like kind of I want to do this other thing too, but then when I'm doing that other thing and then I try to take time for it's like the math doesn't always math for me. And I know that that's a balance, and we just have to figure out how to do that. And one of the ways that I've been trying to combat that is that this is hard, but like when I am with my kids, like how can I offer them really, really quality time and like intentional time? And that has been helping. But I'm trying not to use it as more pressure to have more guilt. But I think that there's a lot of expectations placed on women to now have careers, financial independence, and be a full-time, dedicated advocate for their children. And sometimes it doesn't math for me.
Yeah. Well, and parenting and motherhood is not June Cleaver anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's different. Like you said, we're working, we're, you know, married, we're, you know, having other, and it's okay. You know, it was different when a woman stayed home, and it was normal for the woman to stay home. And even then, though, I still think that woman needed a break.
I'm sure she did.
More so because she needed, but it wasn't, you know, that was frowned upon. And I even was told when I was working, well, your break is you're going to work.
I believe that too.
That's not really a break. Yes, it is leaving my children, but it's too, you know, I'm still working. I'm working either at home or I'm working at work. That's not a break. And so we have to, as women, and and men, not just women, because I have male friends too, who feel like they work all day, but then they got to be fathers all, you know, at night. And they got to go to every football game. You have to take time for yourself. And you don't want to be 40 like I was, worrying if you're about to die.
Yes. And like, I want to take an opportunity to shout out another book. Eve Rodsky has a book called Fair Play. And she even has a little game that you can buy separately with all these different cards. And the whole premise of the book, I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, is this division of labor at home. And that our culture doesn't value the work, what I call invisible work. I have an incredible nanny that offers our family so much support, and we talk about this invisible work, because I'll be like, Deborah, I see you. And I'll be like, what invisible work did you do today? And she's like, I sharpened all the pencils, so when we go out to dinner, the kids have colored pencils. I'm like, I see you. And so I talk about this invisible work all the time, but what she does in this book is she brings to light this invisible work. And she says we need to talk about it, and we need to have dedicated time where we connect with our partners. And it's this concept of moving from delegation as a wife and a mother to shared ownership. And that's very, very different. And the way I think about it is like on my computer, I have all these tabs open, right? It's like shared ownership means you get to click the X on those tabs, right? Because if you're delegating, you're still owning. And if you're still owning, it's not really true support, right? Open. And so just I share these resources because I think that they open our mind and ability to process a different way. Because I don't want to just be like, isn't it so messed up that we live in? It's like, no, there's other options. Yes. And so I highly recommend the book Fair Play if you're a parent, if you're in a partnership where you have someone who's willing to say, let's divide this. Maybe I should get you this book for your baby.
I was like, my husband's birthday's coming up, so where do I order that?
Right before the baby is supposed to be born.
It's just such an interesting perspective. Let's take a shot at a new way, because there is unconscious, invisible work that a lot of females carry in partnerships as they hold careers and as they're rearing children. So shout out to Eve for this book. And I know we're coming up on time, but, Marilyn, I'd love for you. I
want to ask a question, though. Sorry, this one's been burning in my mind.
Okay.
Right. So when you begin to show up for yourself, the world, especially the people who you were, showing up for, goes, you're selfish. Stop being so selfish. Why did you all of a sudden become so selfish? And so I'm curious, I know for sure, you haven't told me, but I know for sure that this happened to you probably. Yes. And I'm sure that somewhere in your head went, am I selfish? Do I need to go back to what I was doing before? And I'm just curious, how did you deal with that? Because anybody who hears this podcast and goes, I'm going to start showing up for myself, is going to do something for themselves, and somebody in their life is going to be like, you're selfish. And that's the real decision point. It's hard to take that first step of doing something for yourself. It's even harder to say to the person who you could be doing something for with that time, to say, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm going to keep doing this for me.
So, yes, I've heard that. And with certain people who I thought were very close to me, it took me repeated times of going back and forth.
Just accepting that you'd fail a little bit here and then get back on.
I'd hear I was selfish, so then I would tell myself, maybe I am being selfish. This person's been in my life this long, so for them, I'll do this still. And then I would, 2 weeks later, no, I'm not doing that. Then I'd hear I was selfish again, and I would kind of, and I finally got to a point where the gym, working out really helped me. That's where my mind, I would clear my mind. I would think about the things I was going to say and how I'd respond. And there's been a few people that I just had to block. Yeah. I had to because they wouldn't accept. I tried to have talks and tell them where I was coming from, why I feel this way now. And still it was, and I would tell you're the selfish one. I'm trying to explain to you why I feel this way and why I'm doing this. And I'm not cutting you out. I just can't be there all the time like you need that. And those people who couldn't accept that, I just blocked them. Because it was easier for me to not see anything from them, not hear from them. And it was a hard, but over repeated times of trying to make it work, I had to just block some people out of my life. And that was blocking their phone number, blocking their social media, just out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And after I did that, I realized I really, didn't miss them. Because that was causing me stress.
Yes.
It was causing me to think, am I selfish? Am I, why can't they understand that?
Yeah.
And I've seen some of those people out and about, and I'm cordial and they're cordial, but it just, it wasn't the right fit anymore.
That's so big. To me, people don't understand this, that loving and showing up for and caring for others does not mean neglecting self.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot neglect yourself and take care of others, because when you do that, all this service that you have towards others is being done because you have to. Yeah. Because you're supposed to, because yada, yada, yada. And that builds what? Resentment, anger, all this stuff. And it's like, how do we show up for others out of just a genuine desire to serve and show up for and love others and do that because it's so fulfilling and create space for ourselves and make sure that we have time for both. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have a little challenge for our listeners. If you're listening to this and you're feeling inspired to try just one small thing in your life that is like, I want to show up for myself in this way, share that with us. And then we can read it on the air and give other people inspiration for tiny little things. Like, I don't even know. I'm going to offer myself 10 minutes every morning before I do anything for anybody else. Like, it can be as small as 10 minutes a day. But if you're listening to this and you're feeling inspired to take action in your life in terms of showing up for yourself in a way that you haven't, please let us know what that is. Email us at podcast@WeShape.com. We'll read it on the air, and we'll inspire other people to hopefully do the same.
And do something. I think so many people get caught in paralysis analysis. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be living for? How do I show up for myself? And it's like, just do something.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't feel good, do something else. And if that doesn't feel good, do something else. And when you find something that feels really good, you're going to be like, oh, I want to do that again and again. Yeah.
It's always one step. Take that one step. And that's in everything, in your fitness, in your mental health, and learning anything new. You got to try with one thing first. Don't try to jump fully into it. And okay, I'm cutting everybody off today, and
today's the day,
and I only love me, and from now on, I'm saying no. You can't do that because it won't work.
Yeah,
pick one thing you're going to do to improve your quality of life, and it has to be something simple, something that you can do consistently.
Yes,
and then when you've mastered that, pick something else.
Love that.
And that's over time, you'll get to a point where you're advocating for yourself more, and others see that you're loving yourself more. And most people are going to be happy for you. Those who aren't,
probably shouldn't be there in the first place.
They shouldn't be there.
And the reality is when they're not happy for you, that means they don't know how to show up for themselves. They're trying to get everyone else to show up for them.
They might be triggered by you showing up for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're shining your candle bright and saying, shine with me. And they're like, I don't want to. I don't want to shine.
And that doesn't mean they won't shine later.
Yeah, that's okay.
They may shine later.
That's okay.
But you keep shining bright because people are watching.
Well, you know what, Marilyn? We're so grateful that you flew all the way here and you are joining us in person to deliver a really important message. And thank you so much for your time and for your story.
Thank you.
Check us out at WeShape.com if you're interested in joining our community, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.